Welcome to the Leading at the Next Level podcast with Dove Development and Consulting, the show built to provide ongoing support for your leadership journey. Today, I have the opportunity to chat with Crystal Farmer, Senior Vice President and Chief Operating Officer with Augusta Health. Crystal and the team at Augusta Health are emerging leadership partners with us on the Leadership Legacy experience, and we get to have some conversation around that. And I'm just super excited to lock arms with you guys as an organization, Crystal. I'll share just as we get going candidly. Cindy and I live north of Harrisonburg. Our kids are spread out. Our last, at least two, maybe our last three grandchildren were born at your facility. So we're pretty excited about that, the value you add, the patient care, everything that you guys do to truly take care of the community. Before we go into some of the questions that I'm going to tee up for you, would you be willing to kind of give your professional background, some experience in the industry, and so on?
Sure. I have been in healthcare for about 30 years. I'm sure I don't look like it with the gray hair, but it's been 30 years. And I started out as a certified nursing assistant in a nursing home. Decided from there that I wanted to go to RN school. Actually, before even that, I started out as a hospice volunteer during college. And so that's where I got my first taste of, caring for people and making something better. And so I went to nursing school, and then through nursing school, I never looked back. I thought this is definitely my calling. And then worked at the bedside for quite a few years as a bedside nurse and was tapped to go into management. I had a director that saw something in me, and no one else volunteered to do it. So I did it. And then from there, just sort of worked my way up without realizing I was working my way up. My career trajectory, the way I saw it, was not in leadership, but really quality and teaching and things like that. But I've been really lucky to work with some great mentors and have great experiences. And now I'm in the executive leadership.
That is amazing. Cindy and me specifically, I absolutely love skilled trades, and we've done a lot of work over the years. Before we started our business, I did with folks in apprenticeship programs, and I say that because the CNA schools often tie into our tech centers and so on. Yep. And I tell people all the time, my goodness, what a great opportunity to get in a field and then let the organization you're working with pay for whatever that continuing education is and grow. Why get the student loans on the front end? That's a whole different conversation. But the reality is, gosh, organizations will invest in you if you show return on investment. And what a cool story that is, Crystal.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Augusta Health does that as well. We have our own CNA program. We have a scholarship program, and we do a lot of it because we believe in investing in our people, investing in our community.
Indeed. So you may or may not know this, but Cindy's background, my wife, she was in healthcare for, I think, around 25 years total. She was with the local hospital before it was bought out by a not local hospital. And that was a great experience. Her last 10 years was as an office manager for hospice. And we talk all the time about how leadership matters so much, because in that 10-year period, the only people that left the hospice group were folks that either retired, planned, or had children to be a stay-at-home parent. And and that's not common at all in hospice because it's a heavy burden. Now,
it is.
That brings me to, as you took the steps through your career, you took on a lot more responsibility. And we share frequently that leadership isn't for the faint of heart. What was your clear purpose for taking on each of those additional roles? Because the burden that comes with it is often very, very heavy.
The original purpose was I just wanted to make things better, and not just for the patients. I mean, patients, when they come into the hospital, assume that they're going to get good care. We all have initials behind our names. But one of the segments that people weren't really paying attention to in leadership, at least at that time when I came into leadership, was the experience of the team members or the staff, particularly RNs. And so there was a lot of burnout. There continues to be a lot of burnout, but I wanted to make their experience better and for them to feel like somebody cared about them. It wasn't always that way in healthcare. In other industries as well, it has always been top down. And I thought, if there's anything I can do, let me leave it better than the way I found it. And at the same time, if I have happy employees, happy team members, our patients are going to be happier. And that's exactly what happened. So at first it was a little bit selfish of, I want to make a better environment for me to work in and for my colleagues to work in. And as I grew into my leadership, all my focus really became on those two things, and everything else worked itself out.
Crystal, that is gospel for any industry. That's so cool. I share in when I wrote Leading with Clear Purpose, in the very introduction, it was based on a conversation I had with a friend who's been the hardest charging guy I've ever known in my life. And I heard this despair in his voice. And my point for writing the book was that burnout you talked about happens at every level. It's not just employees. It can be leaders. It can be business owners.
Absolutely.
And if we don't have something that's given us fulfillment in what we do, it's going to happen.
Well, that actually happened. I'm glad that you're talking about burnout with leaders, because, during COVID, I myself got burned out. My leaders were burned out, and there's nowhere to go. It was just a very different situation. There's a lot of crisis leadership, so there's not a lot of opportunities to ask for people's opinion and voice. And so that was a different type of leadership for me. And, we did what we had to do. But coming out of crisis leadership and going back into, okay, let's come back together. Let's focus on what's important. And that was very hard to come out of that transition and be able to lead a team, I say, to the light, because, we were seeing things getting better, and staffing was getting better, and mortality was getting better. And it was very difficult. And I found myself burnt out too, asking myself of what fills my cup, what's going to make me come back the next day. And so I went through a short time period of, maybe I've reached my level of leadership that I can provide for this team. Maybe I've reached my max and they need somebody else.
We've seen that for every level of an organization, it matters. The challenge is it falls on the leader's role to provide that purpose and that connection to fulfillment for everybody at every level. And so seldom do we, if we've taken on that leadership responsibility, have somebody that can do it for us. So it's so important to have those networks, those alliances that we can rely on for that.
Well, my team did do that for me. And, really how we got it started was I would ask all of them, what fills your cup every day? Is it interacting with patients? Is it interacting with your team? Is it making sure you have dinner every night with your family? Is it your schedule? And those are the things we started working on for their environment.
Now, Crystal, if we were having this conversation 3 or 4 months ago, I would probably be saying, hey, will you be on the third panel of the event, of the executive panels? Because that's exactly the topic is that panel's addressing. I've got 5 business owners, executives that are going to talk through, here's how I help my team understand their own individual purpose and connect it back to what we do as an organization, because it's so absolutely critical. Very cool. Now, as you grew through the ranks, having different titles doesn't make you a leader. You can be, I tell people all the time, I can sit in the garage and it doesn't make me a car. What motivated you to really get involved in the leadership development aspect so you could lead and earn real influence as opposed to being the boss that just had authority?
I always tell folks, lead from where you are and start there. And if that's not for you, you probably should stay away from leadership. When I decided to go back and get my degree because I wanted to understand how things worked in a hospital and why decisions were made, I had a few, our unit had a few bad outcomes for patients. And I thought, how can I make this better as one person? I don't want my patients to have a worse outcome. I see my colleagues burning out. So I decided, at that time, I only had a diploma of nursing. Maybe I need to go back and get my bachelor's and my master's degree, because maybe there's something in that curriculum that helps me understand why decisions are made at the level that they're made at in the C-suite. And I did find some answers, but not the answer to fix all of those things. It really comes from the person and what your motivation is, proper motivation. If you're motivated always to just come out of college and go straight into a C-suite, that's not proper motivation for me. It's what do you see in your daily work that you feel like you can make better? And so that was really my purpose. And then as I, became a director and then a chief nursing officer, my focus was really more about, obviously less about me, but more about mentoring more people. I would always tell my nursing leaders and my colleagues, I'm going to keep this seat warm for you, because one day you're going to be here and I want to help you get there. And so not being threatened by that, but growing other people is really, I think that's one of the things that fills my cup, is mentoring and growing other people. I have several people that I mentored that are now chief nursing officers or in other C-suite roles, and that makes it feel really good.
Crystal, about 15 years ago, I had that experience, but it wasn't intentional. For me, it was survival, because I needed to have folks that would prop me up and support me when I took on more than I could fulfill on my own. But looking back on that over the last 15 years, to see each of them, and I'm not taking credit for what they did. My gosh, they worked hard. They were amazing people. I'm just glad I could have a fingerprint on their life in the process. It's some of the most rewarding experience I've ever had in my life. And that's, to that end, that's a large part of why Cindy and I've chosen to what we do over the last 10 years, is how can we sow into other people? We need to survive. We need to make an income, but that'll take care of itself if we do the right things. And wow, what a great statement you shared.
Absolutely. My first CNO role, I actually didn't apply for. My CEO came to me and said, I really think you should apply for this CNO role at one of our sister hospitals. And I said, no, I'm not ready to be the executive and everything fall on me. I like where I am. And he said, well, let me just reword it for you. You start in June. I need you and the CEO to meet. And we hit it off, and the CEO of that hospital. And so sometimes it's our mentors and our leaders give us a kick in the butt as well. No, you're ready to move. And I want to be that for somebody else, because I wouldn't be where I am if I just stayed in my own head.
And the reality is, some of the best folks I've ever seen in executive roles, owner roles, weren't necessarily ready. They did it because they knew they could fill a need, and they would have rather been doing the other job, but they cared enough about the people to do it.
Exactly.
I would argue we could say that about politicians too, but I'll stay off that.
That'd be another hour long.
Oh dear. And we won't fix it. So that is what it is. Crystal Moyer has been with us at our Live to Lead event a couple times over the years. And this year we had some conversation with her, and it's grown into the partnership that we've got on the upcoming Leadership Legacy experience. What was it for you guys at Augusta Health that you said, yeah, this is something that we would indeed like to lock arms with Wes and Cindy, Dove Development and Consulting, to really partner on and provide for the community?
You know, we're an independent hospital, and which means we don't have a lot of legs and arms and other resources to go to. So whenever there's something locally and in the community that can help our leaders develop, that's what we want to be a part of. And I think it's fantastic that it's just a couple miles down the road, and we can participate in this every year. Our leaders now are always looking for opportunities to develop. It's even better that because it's local, we can network with other leaders outside of healthcare and healthcare. And so I think that's a great opportunity for us as well. But where we are now, we are really hyper focused on making sure our leaders are getting the opportunity to develop themselves. It does prevent burnout. When you are learning and developing, it is known to prevent burnout.
Yeah, Crystal, about 25 years ago, I was working in behavior-based safety, and I was just young in my career, and I'm starting to go to these conferences with people that I saw as larger than life. And one of the things that I learned, to your point about it's cool to network with other folks with similar responsibility, is I learned that they were dealing with some of the same issues I was. People are people, regardless of the widgets we make, regardless of the industry we're in. We all tend to have it, and it was so uplifting. But even more importantly, I got to connect with those people and say, hey, when you ran into this issue, what did you do?
Exactly.
And it was just absolutely career changing for me. Now, we've talked a lot about leadership as a whole. What would you like the community to know that they probably don't know or understand about Augusta Health?
And I think there's a couple things. One is our people are the differentiator. You know, every hospital has an ED and an OR and provides essentially the same services. What's different about Augusta Health is our people, and you mentioned it earlier, you know, when you talked about your children being born here, but that's what made the difference for me to come work here, was the people that I met, and they're very genuine and they care about this community. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing is, as a hospital, when people just call us as a hospital, they think we just take care of sick patients. We are so much more than a hospital. We have a lot of clinics out in the community. We go as far as Lexington and Crozet, and we're in Harrisonburg. And so we're more than that. But also the other piece is we don't want people to come into the hospital. We want to treat them before they get here. So our mobile clinic and our neighborhood clinics, we recently purchased an RV, which is about to be deployed. But before that, we just had a van and started going to different communities, homeless communities, church communities, just communities where we saw there was a desperate need for healthcare, and taking healthcare to them. So that would avoid, ER visits and really coming into the hospital when it's too late. We are more than just taking care of sick people in a hospital.
That's powerful. I say, whether it's appropriate or not, I say all the time, there's a wide variance between healthcare and medical care. Medical
Yes.
care is, here's a prescription when you're sick. Healthcare is, how do I make sure you're well? And I'm certainly not a doctor, but I don't want to see a doctor. I don't want to be sick, right? I want health care. So that's a powerful statement you made. And because you're independent, you get to call the shots on that.
Yes, our community has been incredibly supportive. I mean, we are enmeshed in the community. If we make a little change here or there, our community tells us, yes, you made the right move, or no, you might want to think about that again. And so they really want the hospital to be successful, because this is where they get their health care and their well care.
Yeah. Well, and hey, the beauty is you're paying attention, because the community is going to say one way or the other. But if you're not connected to and paying attention to that, it doesn't really matter, right? People have Google reviews and all this other stuff, but if we don't listen to it, we can't grow. We can't do what they need. Now, you said something so powerful. You talked about, when we do these things right, people want to be a part of it. People want to come there as I'm going to say clients, in this case, maybe patients, whatever the case may be, but employees want to be part of it too. I just yesterday finished the manuscript for a book on values, and how critical a strong foundation is in an organization around core values. And I made the case throughout the book that when we have those values in place, over time, people will actually knock on the door and say, we want to be part of your team. And it's not all about the pay. So
absolutely. We have some really strong competitors on each side of us that are great health systems. And consistently we find, particularly after COVID, coming out of COVID, and I think it's the way we treated our people as well. And we call it live serve. So you're right, it's not always a patient. It could be someone that's going to the fitness center or using our pharmacy. But I think they saw the differentiator was our people and how we treated our people during that time. I mean, during COVID, we would cook extra meals in the kitchen. So the nurses or the clinicians that were working 14 hours could take a meal home to their family and not worry about cooking. I mean, those are the type of things that you're never going to make money on that, but it was the right thing to do, and they felt cared about.
Crystal, I would argue that not going to make money on that, from the fact of, my first book was called What's Killing Your Profitability? It all boils down to leadership. And I went through a pretty comprehensive study of how much recruitment retention really costs. Right. I would argue replacing those folks would have been a lot more expensive than those meals. So maybe it did hit the bottom line.
Oh, absolutely. The payout was very different, and it was well worth it.
Yes, ma'am. Now, you've talked about some neat stuff. Can you share an example of maybe a campaign or a project that you guys have done recently, not recently, whatever, that's really made a positive impact on the community you serve, or maybe even the industry as a whole? Because sometimes when you hold a high bar, it stretches other people.
I kind of already gave it away. Our neighborhood community clinic it can't be talked about enough. There's actually two things, and it really started, they kind of play off of each other. We got the idea for the mobile clinic during COVID when the vaccines came out, and the state said, we really need every hospital to try, or every healthcare system to try to vaccinate as many people. And so at first, because the vaccines are very hard to get a hold of, we just were focused on just our area, Fishersville, Waynesboro, Stanton. And we soon realized that folks from other areas, Harrisonburg, Charlottesville, other areas were coming into our area to get those same things. And we also realized the people that need the vaccine the most aren't able to come to us. And so that's where the idea for the mobile clinic came about. It was a mobile vaccination effort at first. And so as we got out into the communities, and churches would invite us to come, Homeless shelters were invited to come, or group living organizations invited us to come, and we started seeing the need, not just for vaccines, but just for healthcare or simple primary care. And so we answered that call, but it really came out of really trying to serve our community and seeing, wow, people can't come to us all the time. We've got to go to them. We've got to go to the people that really need the help.
And that's pretty much encompasses what leadership's all about, right? Going to the people and doing. Yes. I could go so far as if this were a faith-based conversation to say, isn't that kind of what Jesus did? But I'll stay off that for a little bit too. Powerful, nicely done. Crystal, you've talked about it a little bit in your career progression and so on. Talk about how the purpose of the organization, Augusta Health specifically, how it aligns with your own values and purpose, and what gives you so much fulfillment of being part of that team.
You know, I talked about it briefly when I said what made the difference for me to come here. And I had worked for another organization in the Richmond area for over 20 years. I was a CNO there, and I was fully vested. I wasn't looking for a job, and happened to have a bad day, and a recruiter called me, and I said, "Where the hell is Fishersville, Virginia?" I've never heard of it, and it was only an hour and a half, and I thought, I've never heard of Augusta Health. Let me just take a drive. And really not expecting, but just trying to learn about another organization. And from the time I walked in the front doors, just everybody treated you like family. And, you know, that can be good or bad if it's always family. But I went through several rounds of interviews. I think I was interviewed by over 50 people. We had a lot of panel interviews, things like that. And there are two interviews that really stood out to me that really, I left here thinking, wow, I do hope they offer me this job, when I came thinking I'm not interested in changing jobs. And it was two interviews. And the first interview was with frontline nurses, and they were very open, as nurses are, with what's wrong with the organization. And I got to ask one question, and the question I asked is, why do you stay? And every single one of them, there's probably about 20 in the room, went around and said, because this is where my grandmother gets her care, or this is where I had my baby, this is where I was born. You know, there's been 7 generations working here. And, you know, it was all about the community, and this is their hospital, where they want to be. And so that was the first one. And then the second interview that really made a huge impact on me was the board. I interviewed with a couple board members who are all local to the community. And they really focused on what are you going to do for our people? So our patients aren't having a great experience here, according to our scores. What are you going to do about that? Well, that happens to be one of my passionate areas, so we talked about that. And they said, also, we don't think our nurses are having a good experience here, as we were having some turnover. And so we talked about that. But they were really focused on the people aspect. And it was so very different. I worked in the community hospital in Richmond, but I didn't really understand the definition of a community hospital until I came here. It really is about the community.
You said something earlier. Cindy and I have a friend named Jeff Henderson. He lives in Atlanta. He wrote a book called Know What You're For. And in that book, he's got a lot of cool stuff in the book. But one of the things he said was exactly what you said. He said, when we take care of our team members take care of our customers.
Yes.
And what you said about the organization as you're coming in, and what I've heard you say throughout this conversation, exemplifies that statement. If you take care of your team, they take care of the people that they need to take care of. And that's so powerful. Well done in that. Now, if we were having this conversation and some folks early in their career, maybe early to mid 20s, they come up and they say, hey, Crystal, we heard you and Wes talking. What advice would you give to us to really grow in our careers and earn leadership influence? Not get titles where we're supervisors, managers, C-suite folks, but what would you tell us to do to really earn leadership influence with the teams we're responsible for?
There's a couple things. One, I always say yes. Even if it doesn't feel like it's something that you're necessarily interested in, or don't feel like your career can go in that direction, say yes to an opportunity. First thing is make sure that the person you're going to be working for is supportive, and that you interview them as much as they interview you. But when that's right, say yes to an opportunity or a project, or reach out to the leaders and say, hey, I'm interested in this. I am so proud of the nurses and the frontline team members that reach out and say, I want to know more about your job, or can I shadow you for a day, or I'm interested in this product or this project. The people that tell me, I want to go work in here, those are the people. I know what your goal is, and I'm going to look for opportunities when those come open. So make what you want to do known. Say yes to simple little projects that are not going to really break you, but you'll get to network more and you'll get more visibility. So more opportunities for visibility, and again, sharing with people what you want to do. Networking, you cannot underestimate the power of networking. And so the more visibility that you get in the organization or outside the organization and opportunities like you're providing, it's only going to work for you.
I'm going to make sure that my son hears this conversation, because those are words that I've told him over and over and over. But the reality is, if anybody's hearing this and has kids, they don't listen to you. They listen to other people not named you. So,
I have two. I know.
Yeah, thanks for saying that, Crystal, because Matthew is absolutely going to hear that statement. And his son was one of the kids that was born in one of our grandkids that was born in your hospital. So he'll hopefully take it to heart and so on. He's a fantastic young man. We're super, super proud of him, but he still listens to other people a little bit better than he does me. But that is what it is.
I have the same situation.
Well, Crystal, we've talked about more or less a structured format here. What have I not asked you that you'd really like to share that you feel like can make an impact on folks?
The one thing that I would say is, and I just mentioned it a minute ago, is make sure when you're going into a role, don't be so impressed. I mean, obviously you need to make a paycheck and you need to make money. But don't be always so impressed on the perks and the things of the job. What's really going to make a difference for you, especially as you're growing your career and you're trying to develop, is having a boss, a supervisor that is willing to mentor you and get you to where you need to be. If you're interviewing your boss or your future boss, and they don't say things about, this is how I'm going to grow you, this is how we want you to develop here, or telling you how do they make it to your seat, that should be a little bit of a warning flag. And so it's probably not going to be a job that you're going to be happy in for a long time. You'll be happy initially, but for long-term growth and for your future goals, you need to align yourselves, and particularly with bosses that can do that for you and want to bring you along.
You brought tears to my eyes as you said that. I had a boss in my early and mid-20s that early on said, Wes, I want you interviewing for a job outside of this organization at least once every year. And Crystal, in my mid-20s, that terrified me. I'm thinking, oh, dear God, what did I do wrong? He said, Wes, I love you. You're doing a great job. You're working hard. You're doing everything I need. But I want you to always be prepared that if you need a job, you're ready. Interviewing's hard. And he worked so hard to give me opportunities to surpass him. I love him dearly to this day. His name was Kevin, and we still stay in touch a dozen years later. And what an impact he made on my career. And what a powerful statement you just made. My goodness, Crystal, we could do this for days. You've got a busy schedule. I don't want to hold you hostage. Thank you for taking the time to do this. This was amazing. We appreciate the partnership that we get to have with you guys. We look forward to building that relationship, so it truly is a win-win partnership. I'll share that for anybody that's accessing this, wherever, however you're hearing this, if you need continuing education credits, specifically in the HR spaces, but there's a few others that Cindy and I work with as well, send us an email at admin@dove-development.net, and we can hook you up with an all-access trial to our full Leading at the Next Level program. Today, I think there's a little bit north of 160 hours worth of content in the digital side. We do new lessons in that, typically live twice a month, and then add them later on to the digital product and so on. Love to be able to hook you up with it. No strings attached, 45 days free trial. Crystal, thanks again for taking the time to do this with us. We truly value the partnership with Augusta Health, and we look forward to building the friendship with you moving forward.
Thanks, Wes. Thank you for the opportunity.
You bet. Make it a great day, everyone. God bless.
Thanks.